Frogs by Gail Gibbons. What will you learn about frogs that you didn't know before? It is springtime at a pond. A jelly-like cluster of eggs floats among the water weeds at the pond surface. These eggs are the beginning of frogs. A breeze ripples the surface. The floating clump of eggs is called frog spawn. Frogs lay their eggs in water or wet places. Otherwise, the eggs could dry up and die. These eggs do not have shells. They are inside jelly-like coverings. As they float, the jelly lets the sun's warmth come through to the eggs inside. Not all the eggs will survive. Most of the time, the large and slimy mass of eggs is too slippery and too big to be eaten. This is nature's way of protecting them, but some of the smaller clusters of eggs will be eaten by creatures living in or near the pond. The dark centers of the eggs slowly grow into frog embryos. The embryos grow until they look like small tadpoles. Tadpoles are frog babies. As they grow, they feed off their own egg yolks. The tadpoles grow until they are big enough to break free into the water. It can take from 3 days to 3 weeks for this to happen, depending on what kind of frogs they will become. One by one, the tadpoles hatch from their eggs. They each have a head, tail, and body. The tadpoles wiggle their tails to swim. The tadpoles breathe by getting air from the water through feathery outside gills. As they swim, they eat very small plants that stick to larger water plants. These tiny plants are called algae. And boys and girls, I hope you notice on this page that we have some of the things that we talked about with text features, which is labeling. And as you can see on the first page, there's a label for the embryo. And then on the second page, we have the tadpole, and its head, body, and tail are labeled. And then in the bottom picture, we have gills and algae also labeled. So those are just examples of some of the text features that we talked about earlier in nonfiction books. 1 week later, the tadpoles look different. They are bigger. Their gills begin to shrink. A flap of skin slowly grows over them. The tadpoles' mouths become hard with tiny teeth in their upper jaws. Now the tadpoles are 1 month old. Their outside gills have disappeared. New gills inside the tadpoles take oxygen from the water. Their tails are wider for stronger swimming. Something wonderful begins to happen. At the base of their tails, bulges appear. This is where their hind frog legs are growing. At 2 months old, the tadpoles start about the pond as they eat. They are still vegetarians. Vegetarians only eat plant life. The tadpoles get bigger. Now they have hind legs. Behind their heads, bulges appear where their front legs are growing. Their tails become smaller. The tadpoles' gills inside their bodies are gone. They have grown lungs to use for breathing. Now and then they wiggle to the surface to breathe in air. The tadpoles are about 3 months old. Again, they look different. They have front legs. Their tails are even smaller. They have shed their tadpole skin and lips. At last, they have the wide mouth of frogs. The tadpoles have become tiny frogs. They climb out of the pond and onto the land. Their tails will become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear. The tiny frogs begin to eat insects and worms. They aren't vegetarians anymore. Frogs are amphibians. The word amphibian comes from a Greek word that means 2 lives. An amphibian can live on land or in the water. Frogs are cold-blooded. That means their inside body temperatures are about the same as the outside temperature. During the next few years, the tiny frogs will grow to be mature frogs. Then they will be able to make their own frog spawn, and there will be new baby frogs. And boys and girls, here is another aspect of nonfiction books when we talk about text features, shown very nicely on this page, and that is the diagram. And you can see that the frog has many parts to its body, and it shows you all the different parts, and they're all labeled, including the tongue, which there's a very interesting fact about the tongue. It says the tongue is attached to the front of the mouth. It is sticky, and if you know something about frogs, which you'll probably learn in the next page or so, is that tongue is very important when a frog is trying to find some food to eat. Frogs don't hunt for food. Their big eyes are on top of their heads, so they see all the way around. They stay very still. When something flies or crawls nearby, their long, sticky tongues dart out to catch it. They swallow their food whole. Frogs that swim use their powerful hind legs and webbed feet to push them through the water. Frogs have 2 sets of eyelids. One set is transparent so they can see through them. When frogs dive, they close these eyelids to protect their eyes. On land, the frogs hop about. They use their very strong hind legs to leap. Most frogs can jump 10 times their body length. They are wonderful jumpers. The next two pages show the difference between a frog and a toad. And I'm going to let you go ahead and read these 2 pages to yourself and notice that there are many, many differences between the frog and the toad, from having teeth or having no teeth, the type of skin that they have, where they can live, the texture of the skin on their body, how they lay their eggs. So I'm just going to let you take a couple minutes and read these 2 pages to yourself. Here are some fun and interesting facts about frogs that I'm going to read to you. This page is called Croak, Croak, Croak. It says that frogs lived 230 million years ago, even before dinosaurs lived on Earth. An African bullfrog can be as big as a football. Frogs protect gardens by eating huge amounts of insects. Some people eat frog legs, which they consider a delicacy. That's like a very special food. A dwarf puddle frog can eat 100 mosquitoes in one night. Frogs have different kinds of feet. Some have sticky toes for climbing. Some have pointed toes for digging. Others have webbed feet for swimming. Some tree frogs spend their entire lives in treetops and never come down to the ground. A glass frog has strange skin. You can see through the skin to its insides. Some very big frogs can eat mice and rats. Some species of frogs are becoming extinct. Herpetologists are trying to find out what is causing this. We must learn to take better care of life on our planet.